now we're on to the lecture part of the seminar. Lecture will be given, of course, by Daina Chiba. So
Hello.
I leave the stage to you.
Okay. Right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hope you slept well. Okay. So here is the outline of the lecture we're going to do today. Well, I'll first talk about what to think about when we think about improving your Mandarin skills, and then I'll do a quick review of Riichi Book 1 for title efficiency more specifically by doing a lot of WWYD, what would you discard quizzes. And then we'll move on to advanced title efficiency that was not covered in the first book. So these materials are from my second book. And I'll also talk about deduction techniques, like how to read the discard points, how to read walls, how to try to read the opponent's weight and things like that. And then I'll conclude. Just as a disclaimer, a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about today are, some of them are directly taken from some of the books published in Japanese. I'm just telling you that not everything that I talk about today is my original thing. Right? So these are the true sources. So before I begin, just out of curiosity, how many of you have read my first book? About slightly less than half, maybe? Okay. Okay. So, all right. So, I think there are two steps in learning Mahjong strategies. Right. Step one is to learn and memorize strategy principles, such as reach judgment. When to reach, when to dama, or push forward principles, or how to fold, how to defend, or tile efficiency principles. And for that, for the first step, you can just refer to my first book and just go over the basic strategies. This is the I suppose the easiest part. This is a straightforward part. You can just learn strategies. But once you learn the strategies, you then need the second step, where you think about exceptions to the theories. You need to know when basic theories don't apply, right? So, for example, take one of the reach judgment principles that says you need to reach a pink only hand. When you have a pink only hand, you should declare Riichi rather than keep it dama, because statistical analysis of Mahjong data have demonstrated that calling Riichi gives you much higher expected payoff, right? But once you understand this principle, you also need to know several exceptions. That there exist several exceptional situations where you should not follow this theory, right? For example, if you are leading and if you are in South 4, right, then you should keep it dama, because there is no point in declaring Riichi and risk it, right? But this exception in turn becomes a new theory, new refined theory, which in turn means that there will be an exception to the refined theory as well. Meaning that there will be a situation where you need to declare Riichi even in South 4 when you're leading, right? So let's take a look at this three-dimensional WWYD. Right? What would you discard? Right? So you just drew 7 bamboo, 7 so you got 10 bai, right? You got Pinfu 10 bai, right? So in normal situation, you'd Riichi, but notice that this is South 4, and you are in the lead. So step 2 suggested that you should keep it dama, right? But notice that the player who is in the second place and the player who is in the third place are in the dead heat, and he's got the pawn of Dora, right? And the point difference between him and yourself is not big enough. If South gets Mangan Sumo or 2039 Sumo, 430 Sumo, then you'll be taken over, right? You'll become second. So you need to stop him, right? And if you declare Riichi, you're the dealer, and if you declare Riichi, then as long as the South player is a rational type, then he is likely to fold. Because if South deals into you, then he'll fall to the third or fourth, right? Because it's in a dead heat. So in this exceptional situation, you might as well just declare Riichi to stop South player, right? So that's when the exception, there is an exception to exception, right? So the process is never ending. Learn the theory, learn exception to exception, learn exception to exception to exception, right? You just have to keep studying. So there is no end, right? And that should be encouraging that, after you learn a lot, there will always be new material for you to learn. That should not discourage you. That should encourage you to learn more, right? So as Einstein said, once you stop learning, you start dying, right? So, another question. How many of you have heard of this dichotomy between digital play and analog play? Yeah? Digital style, analog style, which are often posed as contradicting approaches, right? So digital approach means that we rely on systematic generalizable strategy principles, right? That are often derived from statistical analysis. So, the theory that we saw, Riichi, ping hand, right? You have to declare Riichi, ping only hand. That's a digital theory, right? And the goal here is to be able to make choices that are correct on average in the long run, right? They may not be correct all the time, but in the long run, you will get higher expected value, higher, better outcome, right? So that's the goal of digital approach. Whereas the analog approach lies more on situational factors. You pay attention to other things. So the goal here is to make choices that are correct in the particular individual situation. So the exception that we saw, that in some situations you might want to declare Riichi even in South 4, that's the analog decision, right? So really, digital and analog are more complementary. They don't contradict with each other. We just have to combine digital theories and analog approaches, right? So digital is more about theory, whereas analog is more about exceptions, right? But here's a warning. It's important to learn analog techniques, but the more you learn about analog techniques, the better you become at detecting analog, collecting analog information and detecting anomalies. The more susceptible you become to overthinking, which I call the analog trap, right? So for example, look at this board. Now you drew 8 bamboo, you get 10 pine, right? And you got 2 doras, right? So in a normal situation, you just Riichi, right? But look, apparently the north player is more likely to be doing Hongitsu or Chinitsu. He's collecting bamboo tiles. Come to think of it, South has not discarded any bamboo tiles. So the bamboo tiles are being very scarce on the board. So you might think, well, okay, even though I have 2 doras, I have really bad weight, right? Bamboo 7. Maybe he has all the bamboos and he may not discard any bamboo. So maybe I should keep Dhamma and hope to draw 5 to make it Pinfu, or maybe draw 6 or 9 to make it Ipeko. But don't think like that. When you have 2 dora, you should just Riichi, right? So don't overthink and declare Riichi is going to go here, right? So when you learn about analog techniques, what's important is to know when to ignore these situational factors. It's important to know how to collect situational information about situational factors, but it's also important to know when to ignore them or when not to ignore them, right? Then you might wonder, then when will it be useful to apply analog technique, right? When should we ignore them? When should we not ignore them? So I think that we should stick with digital theories when digital theory unambiguously says A is better than B. And we should rely on analog technique when theory is rather ambiguous. When theory says, oh, A and B are probably equally, almost as equally as good. So in order to be able to apply analog techniques, you need to know the logic behind theories, not just what the theories say, but you need to understand why theories say certain things, right? Instead of just knowing that you need to Riichi a pink only hand, you need to know why it is better to declare Riichi a pink only hand, things like that. Right? So we will see some examples of those. So we got Tenpai here, right? So our discard choices are discarding 4-pin to make Champon weight, or discard 3-pin to make 2-5 side weight, Yamen weight. What does the theory say about what we should do? What did I say in Riichi book 1?
We discard 4-pin.
So what I say in Riichi book is that you should discard 4-pin to make a Champon weight. So that's what the theory says. But in addition to knowing that what the theory says, you also need to understand why we should discard 4, so that you can judge, when not to listen to that advice, right? When to ignore that principle. Right, so here's the reason why in an ordinary normal situation we should discard 4 to get Champon weight. So if you discard 3-pin and get the 2-5 side weight, you get more tiles to win with, right? Yamen weight is better in terms of tile efficiency, but if you do that, the hand value will be 2,600. Plus Uradora or Ippazu or Sino, right? Whereas if you get Champon weight, and if you win with Chun, Red Dragon, then the minimum would be 5,200, right? And the thing is that the expected win rate from this that we learned from statistical analysis have demonstrated that the win rate will be about the same, whether or not you get the 2-5 side weight or Champon weight. Because the Champon weight is more like honor tiles are more likely to come out, you get comparable win rate. And if the win rates are about the same, then it's better to have more expensive hand, right? Rather than stick with rather than doing the 2-5 side weight. So that's the reason why we should we should discard 4, right? So now that you understand that, you can now understand when not to do that. When to deviate from what the theory says, right? For example, if you are in South 4, and if you know that you can win the game by winning any hand, whatever the score is. And suppose that someone is doing Homitsu, which means that Red Dragon is not likely to come out easily, then you should just do 2-5 side weight to maximize the chance of winning. right? Or if someone is collecting pin tiles, then just discard 4 to make shampoo weight to so that you can expect to get red driver, right? Or another example of theory is about the reach only hand, right? So reach only hand is very bad. Riichi, declaring Riichi is bad, and keeping the hand Dama is also bad. So the two reaching and not reaching are very doesn't have. There isn't big difference between the two, reaching and not reaching. So your judgment will depend on a lot of situational factors, right? So you should rather Riichi if your weight is good, or you should Riichi if you're the dealer when you have Riichi only hand, right? Whereas you should keep it Dama if your weights are bad or if you're not the dealer, right? So this is one of the situations where you might want to rely on situational factors using analog techniques to make a decision between these two, because these two scenarios are comparable, right? So what are we going to do for the rest of the lecture today is that I'm going to introduce a few theories that I didn't cover in Riichi Book 1, right? And we'll also talk about exceptional situations where the new theories don't apply. Okay? So we start with the basic tile efficiency using what's called Tibet style Mahjong. Have you guys heard of the Tibet Mahjong approach? Yeah, you have done it? Not really. So I don't know why it's called Tibet. The story is that the Benjamin Boas learned that Mahjong when he was training as a monk or something in Tibet. I don't know how accurate the story is, but here is what it involves. So we use fewer tiles per hand. We start with 4 tiles, and we move on to 7 tiles or 10 tiles instead of 13 tiles. Right? Regular Mahjong has 13 tiles per hand. But instead of that, we start with 4 tiles per hand to simplify the game. No Yaku, no Dora. So it's about pure tile efficiency, how to complete your hand. Right? And we sometimes use only one suit to make it even simpler. Right? It's primarily a teaching technique for beginners, but we can also use a Tibet Mahjong as a tile efficiency exercise. So we'll do a series of WWYD quizzes, what would you discard quizzes, in Tibet style to review tile efficiency basics. Right? So we start with a 4 tile Tibet, meaning that 5 tiles in a hand, because you just drew a tile, so you're about to discard 1 tile, right? To complete the head, Dama, and 1 group, right? So it could be a run, a sequence, or a set, a triplet, right? Alternatively, you can think of it as if you just pawned a 3rd dragon, right? You need to win this hand, right? You really need to win this hand. So you just want to maximize your chance of winning, right? So let's say that we just got on the white dragon. So now what should we discard? What's the right discard here? Should be very easy. 2 pin? 7 pin. 7 pin to get Tenpai. You got Daisangen Tenpai, right? It's easy. How about this? 1, 1, 4, 9, and north. What should we discard? 4? 4 pin? Discard 4 pin? Pay, right? Why did you say pay 4 to get Chanta? No, you don't need Chanta. I mean, there is no Yaku in the first place, and you only got Daisangen, right? So you need to maximize tile efficiency. So north, right? Number tiles are better than honor tiles in terms of tile efficiency, right? Because this is more likely to form side weight protoran, right? Whereas this gets improved only if you drew another north, right? Should be an easy question, right? How about now? 9 boundaries. It's redundant, right? When you have 6, 8, you don't need 9. When you have 1, 2, 4, you don't need 1, right? So that's also easy. How about now? 5, right? When you have 2, 3, 5, you don't need 5. Well, when you have 5, 7, 8, you don't need 5. 5 is redundant for 2 reasons, right? It's easy. Now it's a little bit more difficult. What would you discard? 2man. Why?
Because
It's closer to the end, right? It's closer to the terminal, right? So this will get sideways if you draw 5 or 7. This will get sideways if you draw 2 or 4, whereas this will become sideways only if you draw 3. Right? So 2 should go, right? So in principle, you should value 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 over 2 or 8, and you should discard 1 or 9, right? That's a basic. Middle tiles are more versatile, right? When you compare floating tiles, right? Isolated tiles that you have in your hand. Now, this question is a little bit more difficult. What would you discard?